In the unforgiving lands of the Arizona Territory, a widowed Apache father asks his son to choose a new mother among their tribe, but the boy's choice will change everything. Thank you so much for watching, and for all your comments. Let me know at the end if you liked the story, and where you're watching from, and why you're following this. The Arizona Territory, 1875. The morning sun cast long shadows across the Apache camp, nestled in the foothills of the Superstition Mountains. Tall Hawk, the respected warrior and recent widower, watched his 10-year-old son, Little Fox, practicing with a small bow near their dwelling. 3 moons had passed since Morning Flower had succumbed to the fever that swept through their tribe, leaving Tall Hawk to raise their son alone. "Your aim improves each day," Tall Hawk said, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "Your mother would be proud." Little Fox lowered his bow, his dark eyes reflecting both pride and sadness. "I miss her stories at night." Tall Hawk nodded solemnly. He too missed Morning Flower's gentle voice and wise counsel. The lodge felt empty without her presence, and he noticed how Little Fox had grown quieter since her passing. "Come," Tall Hawk said. "The council meets today. There are important matters to discuss." As they walked through the camp, members of the tribe nodded respectfully. Tall Hawk had earned their admiration not only as a skilled hunter and warrior, but as a voice of reason among the tribal leaders. When they arrived at the council circle, the elders were already seated, their faces grave. Chief Running Bear addressed the gathering. "The soldiers have established a new fort to the north. They bring more settlers who do not respect our boundaries. We have kept the peace as promised," Tall Hawk reminded them. "The treaty. The white man's treaties are like tracks in sand," interrupted Black Wolf, a fierce warrior known for his hatred of the settlers. "The wind comes, and they are gone." Tall Hawk frowned. "War brings only more suffering to our people. We have lost too many. And we lose more by waiting," Black Wolf countered. "While we talk, they take our hunting grounds." The debate continued as Little Fox listened intently. When a young warrior burst into the circle, all fell silent. "A wagon train," the warrior reported breathlessly. "Small, separated from the others, they camp by the twisted river." Black Wolf's eyes gleamed. "The spirits have answered us. We will show the soldiers we will not be pushed from our lands." Tall Hawk stood. "Is this the path we choose? To attack those who may simply be lost?" Chief Running Bear raised his hand for silence. "We will observe first. If they trespass on sacred ground, we will act." He turned to Tall Hawk. "You and Black Wolf will lead the scouting party at dawn." As the council dispersed, Chief Running Bear pulled Tall Hawk aside. "Your lodge needs a woman's touch. Little Fox needs a mother." Tall Hawk stiffened. "It is too soon. The boy grows wild with grief," the chief insisted. "Several women of the tribe would make worthy wives. Even my sister's daughter, Red Willow, has spoken of you with admiration." Tall Hawk looked across the camp where Little Fox now sat alone, carving a piece of wood. "I will consider your words." That night, as they ate their meal in silence, Tall Hawk studied his son's face in the firelight. The boy resembled his mother. The same thoughtful eyes, the same quiet strength. "The chief believes you need a mother," Tall Hawk said carefully. Little Fox's hands stopped moving. "No one can replace her." "Not replace," Tall Hawk corrected gently. "But our ways teach us that life continues. A lodge needs balance." Little Fox remained silent, staring into the fire. "Perhaps," Tall Hawk continued, "when the time is right, you might help choose someone who would be good for our family." Little Fox looked up, surprised. "I would choose?" Tall Hawk nodded. "Your heart will know." The next morning, before the sun had fully risen, Tall Hawk and Black Wolf led a small group of warriors toward the settlers' camp. They moved silently through the desert landscape, leaving no trace of their passage. From a ridge overlooking the small valley, they observed the wagon train, 3 wagons with perhaps 15 people. They had formed a circle near a stream, unaware of the watching eyes. "They are few," Black Wolf whispered. "We can take them easily." Tall Hawk studied the camp. "There are women and children. They appear lost, not threatening. All settlers threatened by their presence," Black Wolf insisted. As they watched, a commotion broke out in the camp. A man was shouting, pointing at a young woman with hair the color of summer wheat. The man struck her, and she fell to the ground. "They fight among themselves," Black Wolf said with contempt. They are weak. The woman rose to her feet, her face defiant despite the blood on her lip. She spoke words they couldn't hear, and the man raised his hand again. Something stirred in Tall Hawk's memory. Morning Flower's face on the day they had met, her spirit unbroken despite her fear. Without thinking, he signaled to the warriors. We watch until sundown, then we decide. But fate had other plans. As the day progressed, a young boy from the settlers' camp wandered away, following a rabbit into the brush where 2 Apache warriors waited. His screams alerted the camp, and chaos erupted as the settlers grabbed their rifles. Now we must act, Black Wolf said, notching an arrow. The battle was brief but fierce. The settlers fought desperately but were outnumbered. When it ended, 7 lay dead, including the man who had struck the blonde woman. The remaining settlers, 3 men, 4 women, and 2 children, were bound and led back to the Apache camp as prisoners. The captives were brought into the Apache camp as the sun began its descent behind the mountains. The tribe gathered to witness their arrival, murmuring among themselves at the sight of the pale-faced strangers. Little Fox pushed through the crowd, his eyes wide with curiosity, as he had rarely seen white people this close. Chief Running Bear stood tall as the prisoners were presented. Why have you brought them here? He asked Tall Hawk, his voice carrying across the now silent camp. They trespassed near sacred ground, Black Wolf answered before Tall Hawk could speak. Some fought and died. These survived. Tall Hawk stepped forward. They were lost, not raiding. The young ones strayed into our warriors' path. What followed was unfortunate. The chief studied the captives, tired, frightened, some defiant despite their bonds. His gaze lingered on the blonde woman who stood straighter than the others, her blue eyes taking in her surroundings with wary intelligence rather than blind fear. What is your name, woman? The chief asked in halting English. She met his gaze. Sarah Mitchell. Why do you travel through Apache land? We seek passage to California, she replied. Our guide died of fever 3 days ago. We became lost. The chief considered this, then turned to Black Wolf. You brought this trouble to our camp. What do you propose we do with them? Black Wolf's answer was swift. The men can work until they prove their worth or die trying. The women can cook and clean. The children, he shrugged, they can learn our ways or join their dead. A murmur ran through the tribe. Adoption of captives was not unknown, but these were not from a neighboring tribe. These were white settlers, the enemy who had been encroaching on their lands for years. The blonde woman, Sarah, stepped forward despite her bound hands. The children have done nothing. If you must keep prisoners, keep me instead. Tall Hawk watched her with growing interest. Her courage reminded him again of Morning Flower. He addressed the chief. The woman speaks truth. Children are innocent in the ways of their elders. Chief Running Bear raised his hand for silence. The prisoners will remain until I decide their fate. Separate the men from the women and children. Guard them well. He looked at Tall Hawk. Your lodge is large. The woman who speaks for the children will stay there under your watch. Black Wolf objected immediately. My chief, this is not wise. The woman should stay with the others. Are you afraid of one bound woman, Black Wolf? The chief asked, causing ripples of laughter among the warriors. He turned to Tall Hawk. She is your responsibility. If she escapes, you will answer to the council. As the captives were led away, Little Fox approached his father. Why must she stay with us? He asked, eyeing Sarah with suspicion. The chief has ordered it, Tall Hawk replied simply, though he himself questioned the wisdom of this arrangement. She will sleep by the entrance. We will place a guard outside. That evening, Sarah sat stiffly in the corner of Tall Hawk's lodge, her hands now freed but her movements closely observed. Little Fox watched her from across the fire, his young face a mask of conflicting emotions, curiosity, resentment, and something else Tall Hawk couldn't quite name. Are you hungry? Tall Hawk asked Sarah, offering a bowl of stew. She accepted it with a nod. Thank you. After a moment's hesitation, she added, The children, are they being fed? Yes, Tall Hawk assured her. We do not harm children. Yet your warriors killed men in front of their sons today, she said quietly. Tall Hawk's expression hardened. Just as your soldiers have killed our fathers in front of their sons. Sarah held his gaze. I am not a soldier, nor were those men who died today. The man who struck you, Tall Hawk said. Was he your husband? Surprise flashed across her face. You were watching us before the attack. She shook her head. No, Thomas Richards was our wagon master. A cruel man. His death doesn't grieve me, but the others. Her voice trailed off. You are not married? I was, she replied. My husband died 2 years ago. I was traveling to join my brother in California. Little Fox, who had been listening intently, spoke up. My mother died too, from the fever. Sarah's expression softened as she looked at the boy. I'm sorry. It's hard to lose someone you love. Little Fox, Tall Hawk said gently. It is time for sleep. As his son reluctantly prepared for bed, Tall Hawk turned back to Sarah. Why did the wagon master strike you? She hesitated. I questioned his direction. I believed we were heading too far south. A bitter smile crossed her lips. It seems I was right. You know something of tracking and direction? My father was a frontiersman. He taught me to read the stars, to know the land. Her voice carried a hint of pride. Skills that weren't enough to save us today. Tall Hawk studied her thoughtfully. This woman was different from what he had expected. As a teacher before her journey west, she spoke with an education uncommon among the settlers he had encountered. Later, after Little Fox had fallen asleep, Tall Hawk sat across the fire from Sarah, keeping watch. He expected her to try to escape, yet she made no move toward the entrance. Why do you not attempt to flee? He asked finally. And leave the children? Go where? She replied. The desert would kill me before I found help. She paused. And you would be punished if I escaped. I heard what your chief said. Tall Hawk was surprised by her concern for his welfare. You understand more than you let on. I've lived on the frontier long enough to learn that people are just people, regardless of their skin color. She looked around the lodge. Your home shows care and craftsmanship. See a father who loves his son. She nodded toward Little Fox's sleeping form. Not so different from the families I taught back in Missouri. Tall Hawk was about to respond when shouting erupted outside. He rose quickly. Stay here, he commanded, then slipped out into the night. He returned shortly, his expression grim. One of the male captives tried to escape. He was caught. Will he be killed? Sarah asked, her face pale in the firelight. That will be for the chief to decide in the morning. Tall Hawk hesitated, then added, It would be better for all if you convinced your people not to attempt such foolishness again. They're frightened, she said simply. Fear makes people do desperate things. As the night deepened, Sarah eventually curled up on the blanket provided, though Tall Hawk noticed she did not truly sleep, her body remaining tense and alert. He himself sat guard, his thoughts troubled by the day's events and by the strange sense of connection he felt to this woman from a world so different from his own. Dawn broke over the Apache camp, painting the sky in streaks of orange and gold. Tall Hawk had dozed only briefly during the night, always keeping one eye on Sarah. She had finally fallen into a restless sleep just before sunrise, exhaustion overcoming her vigilance. Little Fox was the first to stir, sitting up and immediately looking to where Sarah lay. The boy's expression was unreadable as he studied the sleeping woman. She did not try to run. Little Fox observed quietly. Tall Hawk nodded. She is not foolish. The others say all white people are our enemies, Little Fox said, his young voice troubled. But Mother told me once that enemies are made, not born. Your mother was wise, Tall Hawk replied, feeling a surge of pride in his son's thoughtfulness. Come, let us prepare for the day. The chief will hold council to decide the fate of the captives. As they moved about their morning routines, Sarah awoke, quickly sitting up and assessing her surroundings. Her blonde hair, now freed from its pins, fell in tangled waves around her shoulders. May I? She gestured toward the water jug. Tall Hawk nodded, watching as she carefully washed her face and attempted to smooth her hair with her fingers. Despite her circumstances, she maintained a dignity that he found himself respecting. What will happen today? She asked directly. The council will decide what to do with you and the others, he answered truthfully. Fear flickered briefly in her eyes, but she squared her shoulders. And what do you think they will decide? Before Tall Hawk could answer, a young Apache woman entered the lodge carrying a bundle of clothing. She glanced curiously at Sarah before speaking to Tall Hawk in their native tongue. Red Willow brings clothing, Tall Hawk explained to Sarah. Your dress is noticeable. Sarah looked down at her torn and dirty blue dress, Then back at the soft buckskin garments Red Willow offered. "Thank you," she said, directing her words to the Apache woman. Red Willow didn't respond but gave Tall Hawk a long, meaningful look before departing. Sarah caught the exchange, her eyes questioning. "Red Willow is the chief's niece," Tall Hawk explained, feeling strangely compelled to clarify. "She is a friend to my family." "I see," Sarah replied, though her tone suggested she perhaps understood more than he had said. After Sarah had changed behind a partition of the lodge, they emerged to find the camp already busy with activity. Little Fox walked ahead as Tall Hawk escorted Sarah toward the central fire where the other captives were being gathered. The reunion was emotional, the women embracing Sarah with tears, the men looking relieved to see her unharmed. The two children, a boy of about 7 and a girl no more than 5, clung to her skirts. "Are you well? Did they hurt you?" one of the women asked frantically. "I'm fine," Sarah assured them. "They have treated me fairly." She knelt down to the children's level. "See? I'm all right. We must be brave now." Tall Hawk observed the interaction with interest. The captives clearly looked to Sarah for strength and guidance, despite her not being the oldest among them. Her natural authority reminded him of how the tribe had often looked to Morning Flower for her quiet wisdom. The sound of a drum signaled the beginning of the council. Chief Running Bear took his place at the center of the gathering, flanked by the tribal elders and warriors of high standing. Tall Hawk was called to sit among them, while Black Wolf stood to the chief's right, his posture rigid with barely contained anger. "We gather to decide the fate of these trespassers," the chief began, speaking in Apache but having his words translated by a warrior who had learned English from the missionaries. The man who had attempted escape the previous night was brought forward first, his face bruised from his capture. The chief regarded him sternly. "You tried to flee after being shown mercy," he stated. "Why should your life be spared?" The man, trembling visibly, could only stammer out frightened apologies. Sarah stepped forward unexpectedly. "He has a wife and children waiting for him in California," she said clearly. "Fear drove him to foolishness, not malice." Black Wolf sneered. "The woman speaks out of turn. This is not her place." Chief Running Bear raised his hand. "Yet her words carry truth." He studied the captives thoughtfully. "What value do these people have to our tribe? We cannot feed idle mouths with winter approaching." An elder spoke up. "The men could help with the hunting and building before the snows come. The women know skills we might learn." "And what of when the soldiers come looking for them?" Black Wolf challenged. "They always come." The debate continued with various opinions being voiced. Throughout it all, Tall Hawk watched Sarah, noting how she remained composed despite the fact that her life hung in the balance of this discussion. Finally, Chief Running Bear raised his hand for silence. "The captives will stay until the first snow. They will work and earn their keep. When winter comes, we will decide again." He looked directly at Sarah. "The woman who speaks well will help our young ones learn the white man's tongue. This may serve us in future dealings." Relief washed over the captives' faces, though their joy was tempered by the knowledge that their fate was merely postponed, not decided. As the council dispersed, Red Willow approached Tall Hawk, speaking in their language. "The chief wishes to speak with you alone," she said, casting a sideways glance at Sarah, who was now comforting the children. "He is not pleased that you support the captive woman's words." Tall Hawk frowned. "I spoke only truth. There is truth and there is loyalty," Red Willow replied softly. "Some say you see too much of your dead wife in the pale-skinned woman." Tall Hawk's expression hardened. "Those who say such things should mind their own lodges." In the chief's dwelling, Running Bear did not mince words. "You walk a dangerous path, my friend. Black Wolf already whispers that your judgment is clouded." "My judgment is clear," Tall Hawk insisted. "Killing the captives brings no honor, and will only invite retaliation." "And the woman? Why does she stay in your lodge when she could join the others now?" Tall Hawk hesitated, unsure himself of the answer. "She..." Little Fox seems to listen when she speaks. He has been silent for so long since his mother's passing. The chief studied him intently. "You told me you would consider taking a new wife from among our people. Red Willow would join with you tomorrow if you asked." "Red Willow deserves a man whose heart is not divided," Tall Hawk replied carefully. "And your heart? Where does it lead you?" The chief's voice was gentle now, that of a friend rather than a leader. I do not know, Tall Hawk admitted, but I will not dishonor Morning Flower's memory with a hasty decision. As he left the chief's lodge, Tall Hawk found Little Fox waiting for him. The boy fell into step beside his father. The white woman, Sarah, Little Fox said suddenly. She knows stories, too. Tall Hawk glanced down at his son, surprised. She told you stories. Little Fox nodded. Last night, when you stepped outside, she spoke of stars that guide lost travelers home. She said her father taught her, like you teach me. Something warm and unexpected bloomed in Tall Hawk's chest. His son had barely spoken of such things since Morning Flower's death. She is... Tall Hawk searched for the right word. Different, Little Fox supplied. Not like the others who scream and cry. She is brave, like Mother was. As they approached the area where the captives were now being assigned tasks, they saw Sarah kneeling before a group of Apache children, carefully pronouncing English words for them to repeat. Her face was animated, patient, showing none of the fear or resentment one might expect from a prisoner. She looked up as they passed, her eyes meeting Tall Hawk's for a brief moment. In that glance, something unspoken passed between them, a recognition perhaps of the strange circumstances that had brought them together, and the uncertain path that lay ahead. 2 weeks passed, and the rhythm of life in the Apache camp adjusted to include the captives. The men worked alongside the warriors, helping to reinforce dwellings and gather firewood for the coming winter. The women assisted with food preparation and craft work, learning Apache techniques while sharing some of their own skills. The children, adaptable as the young often are, played with the Apache children, already picking up words in each other's languages. Sarah had settled into her role as teacher, spending mornings instructing the tribe's children in English and afternoons helping with various tasks. Each night she returned to Tall Hawk's lodge, no longer as a closely guarded prisoner, but as something between a guest and a member of the household. Little Fox had gradually warmed to her presence, especially after discovering her knowledge of the night sky matched his father's in many ways. On this particular evening, as the first hints of autumn crispness touched the air, Tall Hawk returned from hunting to find Sarah and Little Fox seated outside the lodge, their heads bent together over a small carving the boy was working on. "See?" Little Fox was saying, his voice more animated than Tall Hawk had heard in months. "The eagle's wings must be balanced or it cannot fly straight." Sarah nodded seriously. "Your hands are very skilled for one so young. Your father must be proud." "He is," Tall Hawk said, approaching them with the rabbits he had caught. Little Fox jumped up, his face brightening at his father's return. "Father, I showed Sarah how to carve properly as you taught me." "And did she learn well?" Tall Hawk asked. Smiling slightly, Little Fox's expression turned solemn with the responsibility of judgment. "She tries hard. Her fingers are not as strong as ours." Sarah laughed, a sound that Tall Hawk realized he had rarely heard from her. "I fear I'm a poor student compared to my teacher," she said, rising and dusting off her buckskin dress. "But I'm honored by his patience." As they prepared the evening meal together, Tall Hawk observed the easy way Sarah and Little Fox now interacted. The boy eagerly explaining Apache customs, Sarah listening with genuine interest and asking thoughtful questions. Something had changed between them, a trust forming that seemed to heal something in his son's wounded spirit. Later, after Little Fox had fallen asleep, Tall Hawk and Sarah sat by the dying fire, a companionable silence between them. These quiet evening hours had become a time when they sometimes shared stories of their lives. She of her teaching days and her journey west, he of Apache ways and the changes he had witnessed in his lifetime. "Your son spoke of his mother today," Sarah said softly. "He said she wove the most beautiful baskets in the tribe." Tall Hawk nodded, a familiar ache filling his chest. Morning Flower's hands created beauty from the simplest things. Little Fox has her gift for seeing what others miss. He misses her deeply. Yes. Tall Hawk's gaze drifted to his sleeping son. "But today, I heard him laugh as he has not laughed since she walked to the spirit world. For that, I thank you." Sarah looked down, her fingers tracing patterns in the earth. "He's a remarkable child, strong but gentle, much like his father." The unexpected compliment caught Tall Hawk off guard. Before he could respond, shouting erupted from the edge of the camp. Both of them rose quickly as warriors rushed past their lodge. "Stay with Little Fox," Tall Hawk instructed, grabbing his knife and bow before hurrying toward the commotion. He returned an hour later, his expression grave. "Soldiers," he explained to Sarah's questioning look. "A small patrol passed near our hunting grounds. They did not see us, but they are searching." "For us," Sarah said quietly, understanding immediately. "The other settlers." Tall Hawk nodded. "Black Wolf wishes to move the camp deeper into the mountains. Others fear this would make hunting more difficult with winter approaching." He studied her face carefully. "The soldiers' presence changes things. The council must decide what to do with you and the others now." "What will they decide?" Sarah asked, her voice steady despite the fear Tall Hawk could sense beneath her composure. "Black Wolf and his supporters will argue for—" He hesitated, not wanting to speak the harsh truth. "Our deaths," Sarah finished for him, "to prevent us from revealing your location if we were found or released." "Yes, but others, including the chief, see no honor in such actions." Tall Hawk moved closer to her. "If you were free, would you lead the soldiers here?" Sarah met his gaze directly. "No. Despite how our captivity began, I've seen enough to know that your people are not the savages my people believe you to be. More bloodshed solves nothing." Tall Hawk believed her, though he knew many in the tribe would not. "The council meets at dawn. I will speak for you and the others." The following morning, as the first light broke over the mountains, the tribal council gathered. The atmosphere was tense, with warriors positioned around the camp perimeter, alert for any sign of approaching soldiers. Chief Running Bear called for silence as the captives were brought forward. Sarah stood tall among them, her blonde hair now braided in the Apache style, her bearing dignified despite the circumstances. "The soldiers search for these people," the chief began. "We must decide their fate before they bring war to our doorstep." Black Wolf stepped forward immediately. "The path is clear. Dead captives tell no tales." Murmurs of both agreement and dissent rippled through the gathering. Tall Hawk took his place in the circle. "These people have worked alongside us without complaint," he said. "They have shared their knowledge freely. The children learn from each other. Is this not the way of survival? To adapt? To learn from others?" "Pretty words," Black Wolf scoffed. "But when the soldiers come with their guns because this yellow-haired woman has told them where to find us, will words protect our children?" The debate grew heated, with various warriors and elders speaking for both mercy and caution. Throughout it all, Sarah and the other captives stood silently, their fate hanging in the balance. Finally, Little Fox stepped unexpectedly into the circle. A hush fell over the gathering. It was highly unusual for a child to speak in council. "My father asked me many days ago to help choose someone who would be good for our family," the boy said, his young voice clear and steady. "I have watched and listened as my mother taught me to do, and I have chosen." He walked deliberately to Sarah and took her hand. "She teaches with patience as my mother did. She knows the stars and respects our ways. Her heart is strong but not hard." He looked directly at Chief Running Bear. "I choose her." Stunned silence followed Little Fox's declaration. Tall Hawk felt as though the ground had shifted beneath his feet, yet somehow his son's words had given voice to feelings he himself had not fully acknowledged. Black Wolf recovered first, his face darkening with anger. "This is madness. The boy does not understand what he says. He understands more than you give him credit for," Tall Hawk replied, moving to stand beside his son and Sarah, whose face reflected her own shock. Little Fox sees with clear eyes, unclouded by fear or hatred. "You would take an enemy into your lodge as wife?" Black Wolf challenged. "Make her mother to your son?" Tall Hawk looked at Sarah, whose blue eyes held questions he couldn't begin to answer in this moment. Yet something passed between them, a recognition of the bond that had formed, unlikely and unexpected as it was. "I would take a woman of courage and wisdom," Tall Hawk answered carefully, "if she would consent to such a path." Chief Running Bear raised his hand for silence as the camp erupted in voices of protest and support. "This is unexpected," he said, his wise eyes moving from Tall Hawk to Sarah. "What says the woman? Would you join with this man, live as Apache, mother his son?" All eyes turned to Sarah, whose face had paled. She looked at Little Fox, then at Tall Hawk, before addressing the chief. "I came to these lands seeking a new beginning after much loss," she said slowly. "I did not expect to find it here, among those I was taught to fear." She squeezed Little Fox's hand gently. I have grown to care for this boy and to respect his father. But such a decision cannot be made in haste or under threat. The chief nodded thoughtfully. Wise words. He looked around the circle, his gaze settling on each elder in turn. I propose this. The woman stays with Tallhawk's family, not as prisoner but as one who may become family. The others will be taken far from our camp and released where they may find their way to the nearest settlement. And when they tell the soldiers of our location, Black Wolf demanded, they will be blindfolded during the journey, the chief replied, and they will give their word to speak nothing of our exact location. He looked to Sarah. Their promise will be bound to your good faith. If they break it, your new family will suffer the consequences. It was a compromise that satisfied few completely, but offered a path forward that avoided bloodshed. The other captives, though reluctant to leave Sarah behind, were overwhelmed with relief at the prospect of freedom. Sarah herself stood tall, her decision made visible in the straightening of her shoulders and the calm certainty in her eyes. 3 days later, as the captives prepared to depart with their Apache escorts, Sarah embraced each of them in farewell. The 2 children clung to her longest, their tears dampening her dress. "Will we ever see you again?" the little girl sobbed. Sarah knelt to their level. "Life has many unexpected turns," she said gently. "I never expected to find a new path here, yet I have. Take courage from that. Sometimes what seems most frightening can lead to something beautiful." As the small party disappeared over the ridge, Tallhawk approached Sarah, Little Fox at his side. "You could have gone with them," he said quietly. Sarah turned to face them. "My journey brought me here for a reason. I'm beginning to understand that now." Little Fox reached for her hand. "Will you tell us a story tonight? One from your people?" Sarah smiled, looking from the boy to his father. "I think I will. And perhaps you can teach me more of your stories as well. We have much to learn from each other." As they walked back toward the lodge, not as captor and captive, but as 3 people finding their way toward becoming a family, the setting sun painted the desert in hues of gold and crimson, a fitting backdrop for an ending that was really a beginning. In the months that followed, as winter settled over the mountains and the tribe gathered close around their fires, the unusual union of Tallhawk and Sarah became less a source of controversy and more a symbol of an uncertain but hopeful future. Their formal marriage ceremony, performed when the first spring flowers appeared, combined elements of both their traditions, a bridge between worlds that had for too long seen only enemies, where there might instead be friends. And on clear nights, the 3 of them would sit outside their lodge, Little Fox between them, as they traced the patterns of stars that looked down equally on all people, regardless of the color of their skin or the language on their tongues.